As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep.
Put pucks in deep.
We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
Pleased now to welcome on Panos Mavridis, the CEO of Puck Empire, one of the biggest hockey social media companies on Instagram right now, and the newest partner of the Fifth Liners Hockey Podcast. Panos, what's happening?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing great now. Entering November here, a big month for our show, and we're excited to be a part of your work and going to help our viewers understand exactly what you do. And you've been huge for globally helping the spread of hockey as hockey has gotten bigger and bigger here. You also have a playing background, though. You're from Greece. Being from Greece, what was your first introduction to hockey? And tell me a little bit about what got your playing career going on the international side.
Yeah, I was born in Greece. I was raised in Canada, but my parents fully Greek, my whole family Greek. So when we moved here, nobody from my family knew what hockey was. I didn't even know what hockey was my first 5, 6 years living in Canada because we're a low income immigrant family. And then we moved to a nicer part when I was about 10, 11. A lot of my friends were playing hockey. It's an expensive sport, so I never was really introduced to it until then. And I was like, okay, I kind of like this. Started off from there. So I was definitely a late starter in terms of playing and even learning the sport. But yeah, I just remember in fourth grade, I had a buddy at my new school that was a Leafs fan. So I personally didn't get into being a Leafs fan, but a lot of people here are Leafs and Detroit fans because I live in Windsor at the border of Detroit. But yeah, that's basically how I got into it. Nobody in my family knew anything about it. I was the first one to ever play, or even I'm the only one who can skate, really. So in my family, still to this day.
Yeah, I come from a similar family of basketball individuals, so I can feel you on that sense. You've played all over the world. To highlight, you've played in Greece, Armenia, Mexico, Qatar. What were some of the biggest differences between the hockey cultures that you've experienced, and what kind of stands out looking back on all those experiences that you've had?
Yeah, the best of all the countries that I've been in, probably in quality, was Armenia, just because they got a lot of Russians playing down there too. One of my teammates there was a former NHL draft pick to the Canucks, so that was cool. Armenia, very physical hockey down there. Mexico was really interesting too because they have a lot of very good skaters. That's one thing I've noticed in these smaller hockey countries. It's a lot of these guys get into it because they start off skating, whereas a lot of people in Canada and America start off by just jumping right into hockey. So these countries have really good skaters because that's how they start. They start off by skating. And it's more of a tight-knit community because as of here in Canada and America, so many people, hundreds of thousands play hockey. Compared to there, it's 1,000 people in Mexico play hockey and they're all in the same rink and everything. They all know each other. So, but yeah, I was definitely surprised with the quality in all three countries. Greece is definitely the least of the three, but there's guys who are really good players, better than I am and I've ever been, and they've only played on that really small rink with really bad ice. One of the guys that I played against in Greece is he's playing in the USPHL now, the USPHL Premier. So that just shows you there's good players everywhere, and that's one thing that I've learned through doing all this is that there's good players everywhere. Just because there's less players in these countries doesn't mean that everyone in those countries are bad at hockey. There's just a lesser pool of them.
You worked with the Greek national team as a social media manager. What got you into the media side of hockey, transitioning from the playing?
Yeah, I'm not very good. I've never been very good, so I got into the media side pretty quick of things. I've been working in sports media since I was 13 years old, 14 years old. That was with the Greek heritage team when I was doing the social media. That was actually a team that I created along with another old buddy of mine. So we created the Greek heritage team, which played the Latam Cup. In 2023, we debuted, and that was actually the first time a Greek team had played in 10 years in ice hockey because the national team went defunct in 2013 due to there's not a rink down there, and to play in the IHF, you need to have a Olympic-sized rink, and Greece doesn't have one. So that was the first time a Greek team had worn the Greek flag playing in 10 years. So that's who I worked with, and then that was really cool. Like I said, I was never really good. So I transitioned to social media pretty quick, and I just always enjoyed it. It's a fun way to like broadcast. It's basically just like talking with your buddies, but to a wider scene of things, with all the follower base, especially with Puck Empire.
Empire has now grown to over 164,000 followers on Instagram. Tell us what sparked the idea behind Puck Empire before it blew up, before it got big. What were some of the first steps that got you into the idea of growing that company, getting that off the ground?
Yeah, I mean, before I did Puck Empire, I was actually a Pittsburgh Penguins writer. I was like 15 years old writing for different Pittsburgh Penguins blogs, and that was like my first job in social media. I was making, I think, like $10 an article. So that was my introduction to media. And then I was like, I want to just start talking about hockey. So I made Puck Empire in 2019. September. I was in travel and tourism class in grade 11, and it just started off as like an analytics page. I would just post about analytics, post about stats, post my own opinions. And then it transitioned to more around the 2020 trade deadline. I decided to start doing like news. I started doing my news around the league, like carousel posts. That was my biggest thing I've ever done. It was what grew me the most amount of followers, quite honestly. And that's how I transitioned to the news side of things. But it really just started as like a fun thing to do because I was a bored teenager and wanted to talk about hockey, and now it's a full-time job for me. So I definitely enjoy it, and I feel lucky to like have the followers that I do and everything like that and the opportunities.
You mentioned the trade carousel post kind of sparking the most growth for you. Was there a moment that you kind of looked at the account and you're like, okay, this could be something a lot bigger than just a side gig and really taking a full-time gig into Punk Empire here?
Yeah, I think I noticed right around like right after COVID started, I had like brands messaging me and they were like, $20 for an advertisement, something like that. And for me back then, I was 16 years old and that was big money for me. So I was like, yeah, I'll take $20 for an advertisement. And yeah, I mean, around the trade deadline, I think I had 2,000 followers before, like a month before the deadline, and I started doing news around the leagues, leading up to the deadline, posting rumors and stuff like that. And in that month span, I think I went from 2,000 to 14,000. It was really crazy growth. And I was like, okay, wow, maybe I should start transitioning more towards news as well. Because at the time there was really not that many other news pages. I think there's NHL Discussion, who's been around forever, and there was a Puck Report. But other than that, those were the only two other news pages. So I was like, why not transition to that as well? So that's really how I started the news side of thing. It was never a plan, but that's what I transitioned to, and it's worked out pretty good. So
You do a lot within the NHL, but you also cover a lot of the global expansion of hockey. Would you say you have a bit of a goal in trying to get hockey to new markets where you've played in all of these unique countries that hockey wouldn't necessarily be thought of as a forefront? What are your goals for Puck Empire and specifically growing hockey in general to new countries?
yeah, so I've got two goals mainly. One is to go to as many countries as possible that have ice hockey and just like broadcast what their ice hockey is like there, to help grow and give it a platform because 99% of hockey fans don't even know that there's hockey in Mexico or Armenia or the places that I've played. So one thing that I'm planning on doing in my upcoming trip to Qatar is hopefully I'm going to be able to interview some of the guys from the national team there and some of the coach as well, who is a former Turkish head coach for the Turkish national team as well. So that's one of my main goals there is just to give these guys a voice because other than me and Hockey Worldwide, which is another big international hockey page, nobody else really covers that type of stuff. So I find it interesting. So that's one of my goals. And then another one that I can't share too much about yet, but it is in the works is I'm planning on owning some sort of team in one of these like lower leagues in one of these untraditional hockey markets uh, to own a team there, hopefully help develop the sport. So that's something I'm working on with a couple other people. Soon enough, it'll be like out there, but I can't say too much yet because we haven't finished it yet. But that's another thing that's definitely in the cards for me is just something like that to be more hands-on with one of these countries as well.
That's unbelievable. We cover mostly the American hockey side, and in the NHL front, there's been quite a few surprises so far this season, whether it's big name teams like Edmonton and Colorado coming out slow, or some of the surprise teams like Calgary, who Matt picked to be dead last in the NHL, up towards the top. Who have been the biggest surprises for you in the NHL early through this month of October?
Yeah, I mean, Calgary early on was definitely a surprise. I had them, I think, third last in the league as well. So they definitely started off hot. They are kind of slowing down a little bit, but I wasn't expecting them to even be above 500 through the first month. So that's definitely a surprise. Edmonton, I mean, not too much of a surprise. I feel like same thing as last year. They just start off slow, weird defensive team. Like I don't know. I don't know what they can even do to get better defensively or in net at this point because the season started. There's not really a lot of net options. But Stuart Skinner's been pretty brutal. Colorado's just plethora of injuries right now, so that's also not too much of a surprise. I think once they get their guys back, like Nishushkin and Ross Colton's out for 8 weeks now, Landeskog's out indefinitely. If they can get those guys back, I think they'll be one of the better teams in the Western Conference. Um, the biggest surprise for me probably right now is Washington. In the East, like they've been really good, and they haven't really looked like they've slowed down at all this month. Their defense has been good, even with Chychrun and Chychrun's out now, and Matt Roy's been out for most of the season so far. So they've definitely been a surprise, even with Ovechkin not really producing like crazy amounts. They've been great. Pierre-Luc Dubois looked good. Pittsburgh, I knew they were going to be bad. I didn't think they were going to be this bad. They looked genuinely terrible. I grew up as a Pittsburgh fan. I don't call myself a Pittsburgh fan now because I run Puck Empire, so I can't really have a fan of a team. But like, I'm rooting for Sidney Crosby points at this point in time, trying to see him get to 2,000 points. I know it's a long shot with all the injuries he's had, but that's all I'm rooting for Pittsburgh at this point. And yeah, I mean, Washington is definitely the biggest surprise, like I said, and Pittsburgh's probably a big surprise for me too, just because I was expecting them to be like in the wild card race all year, and they look like they're checked out of it already.
Yeah, with your focus on expanding the game globally, I can imagine how excited you were with the Four Nations tournament coming up in February being announced. Any early roster or tournament predictions that you have for that Four Nations tournament?
I mean, I do want to say I wish that Czechia was also in the tournament, and I know Russia can't be in it for the reasons that's going on, but Czechia would have been a nice one to have. Just like they even have enough players to put together a full team, like of NHL players specifically. If the NHL wants to keep it strictly NHLers, Czechia has enough. Uh, but yeah, I mean, right now, in my opinion, Canada has the best overall team, but their goaltending scares me. I know they've got such a good team up front, but like their goaltenders, I posted about it the other day. There's 18 Canadian goaltenders this season that have played in the NHL, and three of them have above 900. That's not great. So I would probably say the US is the favorite. I mean, I'm expecting like a couple interesting things with Canada. I think like we're gonna see Zach Hyman be on the team because of his connection with Connor McDavid, most likely. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Stuart Skinner because Connor McDavid's there. I'm expecting Crosby to be the captain after McDavid publicly went out and said like Crosby should be the captain. Um, as for the States, I mean, I'm expecting like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like Brian Rust honestly in there as well in a depth type of role. I know he's hurt right now. He hasn't been that great this season when he has played. But he has been consistently pretty good over the last few seasons. It'd be cool to see him get like a depth type of role. Cole Caulfield will probably be there. I mean, he's scoring every other game, it seems like this season. In net for the US is probably going to be Connor Hellbuck, but they've also got Swayman and Ottinger as well. So they're really deep in net compared to Canada, who has like Aiden Hill and Stuart Skinner and Samuel Montembeault and Marc-Andre Fleury. So definitely the US has the edge in net. And I do think the US is probably going to win the tournament just because the gold medal game, I believe, is also in Boston. Um, but I do think it'll be a good tournament. I do wish that we had a couple more teams in there, but I understand the NHL wants to keep it like strictly NHL guys. But like I said, Czechia just won the world championship and they're not even in there. So that's a little disappointing. I do think it's a step in the right direction. I hope eventually it becomes a World Cup of Hockey type of thing, and I hope they don't do something similar to what they did in 2016 with like the Team North America, Team Europe. I don't really like that much. I know it's a hot take. I just think it's kind of corny. It's not like World Cup style. You know, it's like Team Europe is a continent with so many different countries. It's not really a World Cup type of thing. So I would rather just see a legit World Cup. But this is the step in the right direction for sure.
Finish it off with some predictions, our favorite thing to do. 1 month into the season, who would be your biggest hot takes for the playoffs to make, to miss, and then a Stanley Cup favorite as we look forward to the rest of the NHL season?
Okay, so a hot take to make it. I'll go with Honestly, I'll go with Seattle in the Western Conference. They actually look pretty good. I had them missing originally, but they don't look too bad. They look better than they did last season, at least. A little more structured hockey, with Dan Bilesma as the head coach. So I'd probably go with them. Hot take to miss. I, I mean, I don't know if it's considered a hot take, but I would still say I'm not sold on the Washington Capitals, even though I said they surprised me. I'm just not sold on them being able to do it for an 82 game pace. Maybe I'm wrong. I know their fans really were going at me with over this course of this month because they've been so good, and I predict them to miss. I don't know. They're an old team. They're a really old team. I mean, Ovechkin's old. They're missing TJ Oshie now. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois is like replaced the TJ Oshie role, but still, I mean, I'm not completely sold on them yet, but they'll probably prove me wrong, and their fans will give it to me. And then my cup prediction, I'll probably go with this is not a hot take, but Dallas to win the cup. To be honest, they're just built everywhere. They're missing on the right D side. Obviously, the right D side is pretty weak, but the rest of the roster is flawless. And right D side will probably be filled up by the deadline because guys will emerge as options throughout the season for the deadline. So I'm not too worried about that. They already look like they're a lock for the playoffs at this moment in time. So as long as they just stay in the course, they'll be perfectly fine. And I think that they'll pretty easily make the playoffs, and they'll be a force to be reckoned with for sure if they can get just a couple more pieces on the right D side. I thought Timothy Liljegren might have been a good ad for them, but obviously he went to San Jose yesterday. But just guys like that, if they can get that, I'm not like sold on Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin. But if they can get someone to replace those guys, I think that could be pretty good in the right direction for them.
Dennis, we're looking forward to working with you, and might have to have you as a more regular guest with some of those takes there. A well-respected guy within the hockey community and Puck Empire on the rise. We're excited to be a part of it. Thanks for joining us here.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to keep working with you guys for the rest of the month and hopefully longer. I feel like we've got a good thing going here. I'm definitely down to be on more episodes if you need me. Time will be a time adjustment thing. I'm going to be 7 hours ahead, but we'll make it work for sure, definitely.